Hey, welcome back to All Bright Metalworks. I'm Troy. We're going to get started on a blacksmith's knife I got an order for. I'm going to kind of just do it straight raw footage as best I can. Got my big piece in there as a rest. And then I have this piece here. This is 5160 bar stock, 1.25 inches wide. I started with 6 inches long. It's going to be a little bit longer than I need. I drilled a hole in at 5/8 on from the end over here, and then right here I drilled it in 5/8, and that's 2.25 to 2.5. Can't remember exactly, from the very end of the stock to there, and then just cut an angled slit with my portable bandsaw, or you can use a hacksaw. So that's what I start with. I also round over the corners to avoid some nubs whenever we hot cut chisel this between the two holes and fold it out. That's the quickest way I can figure out on making a blacksmith's knife with the long metal tang. For production purposes, traditionally they would just set down the metal right here and set it down to about half the thickness and then taper it down to a point. But that's a lot of work that's not really needed, so we're doing the easy way. So my forge is almost heated up, but I'm going to go ahead and stick this metal in and get it preheating. Sending it in with this in first, because that's the area I'm going to be working on, doing a hot chisel there. And the goal is to get that work area pretty much straight underneath the torch flame. As you can see, I got almost halfway down on that first pass. Mostly just a marking pass. Second pass I should get all the way through. Pardon the mess, the shop is a little messy. Got a little backed up with stuff and got a new table saw and don't quite have a good spot for it yet, so it's just off in the corner. Got a little busy and didn't get myself cleaned up. I'm gonna put my sacrificial plate on that I made just out of a little 1/8 inch flat stock. I don't want to mar up my anvil. My chisel is just a piece of 5160 that I had left over from a blade that messed up. Just drilled a hole through it and welded a rod to it. Just forged a simple little handle and curled it over. Works pretty good. Slipping all around today. It's hard to tell, but I cut all the way through that time. Spot there just looks like it's together, but it's through. Alright, this time around we're going to straighten out that tang, and I'm going to use my hot cut hardy as kind of a way to open it up. This is made from the knuckle of a piece of sucker rod. My local feed store, they sell fencing supplies and a lot of cattle fences that you see, those metal pipes with the rods. They use suckle rods from the oil fields. I just took this and ground the threads off of this end and forged it down to a point. And this is actually the part they would use a wrench on to tighten the knuckles together between two rods. And I just had to do a tiny bit of grinding to it. So I'm going to use that and tap down onto it to spread it out and twist and pry, and then try to bring it to the horn of the anvil to straighten out. That's not a good angle. I feel like I got the wrong tongs for this job. Once I can get some tongs in there, which it looks like I can now, then I can grab it and pry by hand. Move to a set of knife jaw tongs and bolt jaw tongs. So I can get in here, get some leverage to pry it open. All right. And it's going to twist up on you as you do it. Got her out that far. Looks like I'm still going to have a little bit of bumps to deal with on the sides. But I lost my heat and got to go back in. As you can see, after you straighten that out, it leaves a little bit of a hump there, but that'll forge down in nicely into the taper. So now that I got it to this point, I should be able to hold on to it good from this end with that pair of tongs. So now I'm going to start working on the blade a bit, and I'm going to draw it out widthwise. I have plenty of metal lengthwise for what I need, but they want a camping kind of cook knife, all around utility knife, so I need a little bit broader blade so that the blade edge gets down below your fingers when you're holding it. That way you can chop vegetables or whatever at camp. And it's going to be an interesting pattern. They picked one that I've done before, and it's going to turn out quite nice. So back into the forge, and I might fast forward through a little bit of the broadening out because just a lot of in and out of the forge. So I'll catch you up whenever we get to our next stage. Alright guys, I got her down to where I am ready to start doing the flattening. I have another homemade tool here. It's a flatter, and that's another knuckle from a sucker rod, just a larger one. And I drilled into it, sunk a piece of 1/2-inch round bar in it and welded it. And it's got a flat face, the face that you strike with the treadle hammer. And then on the other end, I got a kind of rounding face for drawing and spreading, and that's the strike face. And that's, again, just another piece of sucker rod. That one I drilled all the way through and welded both sides. Pretty handy tool. Great thing for getting good clean forgings. That helps get a lot of those hammer marks out. This one's going to have a smooth ground edge. So, got to get all the hammer marks out as best I can. It needs a good high polish to be able to resist rust and be able to give them a good long life without much extra care and everything to it like you do with the rougher grind to it. So it's going to be almost a mirror polished edge. Back into the forge with that, and almost done with that. I want to do one more pass with the flatter. Then we're going to turn it around and start addressing the handle. That part I'm going to let it cool for a few minutes to where I can handle it. Don't want to cool it off with any water while it's any kind of hot. Otherwise you'll potentially get stress fractures in the blade. And I give lifetime warranties to all my work if I can, but definitely my blades. So I need to do my best to make sure they're at the best quality possible, because I'm making myself responsible for them for the rest of my life and my company's life. So I'll be back with you after my next round of flattening, and we're gonna go over to the grinder and dress up some of the tag, or rag end. Alright, sorry guys about the extra noise. I got my big 4-foot fan going. It's a little toasty in here. So it's touchable but kind of uncomfortable, so I'm going to do this with the tongs. Generally you don't wear gloves on a grinder, but my hands aren't going to be anywhere near the grinder. They're going to be on the tongs. So I'm going to get this started. It's going to get loud, so I'm just going to cut to some music while I work. Alright, it's ready to hit back into the forge and start pounding on metal again. See you in a second. I started off straightening it out, and then I went to the end and started tapering the end. It's a lot easier to start with tapering an end. And as you noticed, as I was hammering, well, I'm not sure if you noticed, but as I was hammering, it was keeping its temperature from the friction of the blow from the hammer. It's kind of a neat phenomenon that happens with blacksmithing, and it helps you isolate your heat and retain your heat. You also don't want to start with a cold anvil on something like this because it'll suck the heat out really fast. So I'm going to put her back in the forge and continue to work out that taper, and I'm going to switch to a time lapse so you don't have to just watch the same thing over and over and over. And over. I forgot to mention, I do enough of these knives that I felt the need to actually mark the side of my anvil. Just got a tiny little chisel mark on the side. If I remember once I'm closer to the end, I'll bring it down to show you, but I have a 4-inch mark, a 6-inch mark, and a 10-inch mark because I do a lot of 4-inch blades and 6-inch blades, and all of them get a 10-inch drawn out handle that then you curl over, and it turns out just the right size for your hand. So that's why you keep seeing me bring it down to the side as I'm checking my length on it to make sure that my handle is being drawn out to where I want it to. I did the maths on it and figured it all out on how much of the material I needed to chisel out and do my holes that I started off with on the drilling, and unfold it. That way I know I have enough material to get to my 10-inch mark with no problem, and actually just a little bit past it, because more is always better. So I can always grind down to shape or cut off what I don't need and get it to exactly where I want it. Because too small of a handle is awkward. So I'm gonna, about half of the handle is forged down, maybe a little over. I'm going to come back to some regular video for a minute instead of time lapse, and we're going to keep trucking on this. Check it. I'm about 3/4 of an inch from my final length. I got to get this section right here thinned down and start working on my final taper down to the end, and by the time I do all that, it'll be right where I want it. So I'll bring you back once I get down to that last little bit. Alright guys, I'm down to the final little bit on the tang. Just got to flare out the very tip a little bit so it's a little wider and nice and smooth on the hand. And then it's time to sign my work. Can't forget to sign your work, especially whenever you put a lot of time and effort into something. Okay, and that's it. And it's just a little bit over my 10-inch mark. But with how I'm doing it, it's going to come in good. Plus, I'm going to dress it up just a little bit over at the grinder. So now it's time to put her back in. Blade first this time. And then I got to take it and pull it out. Use my touch mark. I'm going to leave my touch mark. You always put it on the left face of the blade. This will also give me a chance to do a final flattening on the blade. Make sure it's all lined up and true. And then I gotta heat it up to critical and put it in vermiculite and let it sit overnight so that it can rest and relax and get all the stresses out. The more work you put into getting the stresses out, the better you're gonna be when it comes to quench time. Otherwise it wants to curve one way or another. And naturally I tend to strike more on the right hand face of the blade. Generally you're supposed to count your blows and do the same amount of blows each time, but I just get into it and forget about it. But flattening it out, letting it rest, do another flattening maybe after that, and then you do your thermal cycling. And so far I haven't really had any issues with warped blades doing it that way. I did learn a new method from Nick Rossi while I was at the Blacksmiths Association of Missouri annual conference in Sedalia. That's Sedalia, Missouri. And he discussed the proper process for basically annealing your blade or normalizing it and letting it relax as best as possible. He's a world-renowned master bladesmith, and he's got almost as many years in as I am old. And he said he's been doing it since he was like 14 or 15, something like that, I think. So he's got a lot of knowledge, and I'm going to lean on that knowledge. And Nick, if you happen to be watching this, you're awesome, and I appreciate all the knowledge you dropped on us. And it is ready for my touch mark. So doing this, you got to make sure you got your touch mark oriented right. I have made a mistake before and touch marked upside down. So this is my touch mark. It's in reverse because it does it the proper way whenever it sinks it into the metal. And I got this from Buckeye Engraving out of Ohio. Ordered it online. They did great work, and I'm very happy with the product they gave me. Not sponsored, but I really like the stuff, so I give a shout out. Alright, here we go. And naturally I got it in the wrong hand. That way. I'm going to make sure it's straight up and down. And give it a good whack. Oh. And I got it a little bit crooked. But not so much that I'm worried about it. So now it's time. It's still got a little bit of heat to it. Yep. Get the flatter. And as it's at these lower temperatures, you really don't want to give it much stress from whacking on it. Alright, she's looking pretty good. Need to straighten that handle out a little bit. But I'm going to have to go back in and straighten that handle out once I curl it. So that's pretty much the main forging. I'm not doing a traditional method where you actually forge in your tip and everything, because the tip is actually not far from where it's going to be in the final product. It's going to have just a slight angle to the tip, so I'm just going to grind it in. I know. All you bladesmiths out there are screaming at the screen right now, but this is what they're getting. They specifically wanted a style that I've made before for a customer. When they were asking what styles I do, I sent them some pictures and they're like, ooh, I want this one. So that's what they're getting. Right now, my blade is sitting at 4 1/4 inches. Kind of hard to tell. It's going to get just a slight bit of concave grind out of the back here where the finger curl comes up in. And from there, I'm going to just do a little bit of dressing. My 4-inch blades are either right at 4 inches or plus or minus about 1/8 to 1/4. So it's kind of hard to get them all exact every time unless you grind it, everything to shape, and then you're just stock removal. You're not actually a blacksmith. But doing a blend of both for this project. All in all, I'm happy with it. Don't know if you can see my mark there, but that's my touch mark. AMW for Albright Metalworks. And it's ready for the next stages. So right now, that stage is getting it normalized. So I'm bringing it up to temperature, throw it in a bucket of vermiculite, and then I will see you on a part 2. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'm gonna put this in that vermiculite and then do my final closeout of this video. There we go. Now I'm going to let this sit in here overnight in the vermiculite, and it should be at its softest that I'm capable of getting it to, and the grains will be as relaxed as possible. Alright guys, that's it for tonight. I got to call it a night. I'm teaching 3D printing in summer school, so I got to get myself to bed, get cleaned up first, and I hope you liked my video. If you did, not now Siri. If you like my video, please hit the like, share, and subscribe. I hope you liked it. If you want to see more content, make sure you get the notification bell on and hit all notifications so you know when my new videos drop. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.